I'm happy to have you all here as we kick off our advocacy training. We've got a farm bill in the works among a host of other pressing issues on the national stage, but I think it's a good first step for us to come together, learn about the farm bill, learn what's on the table, and learn how we can advance our voice as New England, because in New England we have 19 members of Congress and 12 U.S. senators. So it's a fairly substantial block, and united we can. So with that, I'll turn it over to one of our most important directors, not that they're all important, but Urban Crowell, the longtime member of our board and the executive director of the Neighboring Food Co-op Association. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, Roger. I just wanted to give a quick welcome to everyone joining us today, and particularly thank Farmers Union and their staff for their partnership and collaboration today. As you may know, Neighboring Food Co-op Association has been an affiliate member of New England Farmers Union since we started, really, as part of our commitment to partnership with family farmers, co-op development, and building a more fair and resilient food system. We do want to invite all of you to join as individual members if you're not already. We also need your help recruiting additional members and invite you to visit newenglandfarmersunion.org for more information. Over the years, we've worked together on a lot of legislative efforts, but this year we've really ramped up that work thanks in large part to CoBank and their support of this initiative, which is working to bring farmers and consumers together to advocate for better food system policy, which includes efforts to strengthen family farms, address climate change, build greater food security, and other efforts relevant, particularly to the Farm Bill, which we're going to learn a lot more about just now. So we're looking forward to the dialogue today, and we'll be reaching out to you after this session for your feedback and information on future trainings and opportunities for action. And with that, I want to invite Mike Strands, Vice President of Advocacy for National Farmers Union, to lead us through today's training. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Urban. Thanks, Roger, and glad to see everybody today. As was said, my name's Mike Strands. I'm the Vice President of Advocacy for National Farmers Union, based out of Washington, D.C. Pardon me for a moment here while I fire up our slides here, but we'll start off with talking a bit more about National Farmers Union, just so you're aware, as I know some of the folks here today might be a bit new to Farmers Union. National Farmers Union's an organization with members across the country. We have more than 230,000 members, members scattered across all states. We're organized in about 33 states through 24 different Farmers Union state-level divisions, New England Farmers Union being one of those. We've been around since 1902 with all sorts of deep history and involvement in helping farmers work together to advocate on behalf of family farmers and ranchers. Usually that's centered around building a more competitive and fair marketplace for farmers, and that we find greater strength if farmers cooperate and work together. We talk about our triangle of issues that we always center on, and those are education, cooperation, and legislation. Today, obviously, we'll be talking mostly about legislation, and that's the work that I do along with some of my colleagues here. I'm joined by Aaron Shire, NFU's Government Relations Director, Leila Soberanis, who's NFU's Senior Government Relations Representative, and Charlie Decker, who's our Advocacy Coordinator. I should note Charlie is a Massachusetts native, so keep that in mind as we go through here as well. But I'll talk a bit about what NFU's been up to recently, and just as far as the Farm Bill goes, how we've gotten to where we are, and my colleagues will help out with that. So, as I mentioned, we work together and we try to build greater power by working together. We do that through programs like the Beginning Farmer Institute, through advocacy trainings, through Women's Conference, through our youth programming. It's a way to bring farmers together across the country. As we know, farmers in New England are very diverse with lots of different production methods and marketing structures and relationships with their communities. The same is true for farmers across the country. We don't focus so much on what divides us or what makes us different, but instead we try to focus on the commonalities. And by working together, we can have a greater voice. One way we do that is through how we set our policy. It's a very grassroots policy for National Farmers Union, as grassroots as it gets, I'd say, where ideas percolate up from local meetings across the country to county meetings, to regional meetings, to state meetings. Different policy concepts are being adopted. This week, I was just seeing some updates out of Minnesota where the Goodhue County, Minnesota Farmers Union had some new policy planks that they wanted to add to the state platform. Those get debated at state conventions and are brought forward to our national policy process, where it's democracy in action right there. And we end up with a policy document that's more than 200 pages long. After all, 180 or 190 farmers union delegates from across the country debate and adopt that language. So the ideas that we advocate for on Capitol Hill and with the administration are the direct result of the debate and consideration that goes on at state, local, county meetings across the country. And it's a very important process for us as an organization, and invite you to get involved in that too. So that's how we've got to where we are on Farm Bill advocacy. And we'll talk more about the Farm Bill, of course, but I think it's also important for us to talk about why we advocate, what we try to accomplish, and how we try to accomplish that through advocacy. So to talk more about that, I'll pass the torch to Leila Soberanis, our Senior Government Relations Representative. Leila.
Mike, and I am not from New England, but I feel as though I am. My in-laws are from Connecticut, Mystic, Connecticut. So I've told President Noonan many times that I have a very special place for New England in my heart at home. So a great thing here that we do every year, I will say, is we do something called a Washington Fly-In, and something, it's a way for our members to get connected with elected officials and meet with their Hill offices. Why it's important for our members to advocate to members of Congress is that it's a way to make a connection with an elected staff. So if you already have that relationship, which you don't always need to have, it's always nice to go in and continue to harbor that relationship, get in touch with those folks, email them all the time, and be a resource. And by being a resource, your member of Congress sometimes will need to know where you are on a specific issue. For example, COVID-19 pandemic, there was scarcity in specific types of crops, whether that be tomatoes, whether that be in dairy. Being able to be that sounding board for that member, always through us as well. But another positive outcome of that examples is during a fly-in, you will get to meet with your members of Congress, and then we'll get a phone call months later being like, oh, so-and-so, weren't they a dairy farmer from this district, or weren't they had this type of issue? And so those types of meetings really do resonate with staff and stick with them. And so it's always very important to have that special relationship, and we're always here to be a resource for you as well. And we sometimes in the past few months have gotten very excited to see a lot of our members even at the White House for specific events that the president has held. So not only with Congress, but the administration, and always being available and being an example to them. And hello? Sorry. My computer kicked me out. Mike, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep.
We're good. Oh, well, thanks, Leila. And, one of those topics about like why we advocate. And why it's important to be in touch with members of Congress is when you do get to be that sort of trusted resource. And it's one thing to tell a member of Congress or their staff what's important to you, but it's better yet when they're asking you because they want to know more about the issue. And that sort of resource is one thing we aim for when we advocate. A good example also was this week when we had a member of Farmers Union, our national vice president, testified at a hearing of the House Agriculture Committee. The topic was about how the EPA affects agriculture. It was set up as an opportunity to mostly limb-based EPA, perhaps unfairly, and it was because we were able to be a witness, an opportunity for Farmers Union to temper that a little bit and to be balanced and reasonable about that, which it's nice to be balanced and reasonable now and again, isn't it? So with that, speaking of balanced and reasonable, Aaron.
Well, that's very kind. I'll take that as a compliment. Thanks, Mike. I'll share a little bit more about our advocacy and how we advocate. You know, Layla already mentioned a few times our annual fall legislative fly-in, and I'm not surprised she did that because it's such an important opportunity for our organization each year. In some ways, it's like the main locus, the big opportunity for us to make a splash, an advocacy splash each year. And so about 250 or so Farmers Union members from across the country come into DC in early September, mid-September, and we do that to speak with one voice and to bring the Farmers Union message to DC all at once, and then also to provide an opportunity for our members to be briefed by USDA. We usually have the Secretary of Agriculture speak to us and hit the hill. Tons of meetings and executive branch agencies as well. USDA, Department of Justice, FDA, EPA, so on. It's also a great way for Farmers Union members from across the country to get to know each other. And we really have two major events each year, our annual fall fly-in and our national convention. Those are the big opportunities for our members from across the country to come in and network and meet each other. And that can also improve our advocacy as we get to know and better understand the organization, each other, your peers, your fellow farmers or fellow food system participants from across the country. So the fly-in is a big deal, but it's not the only opportunity to advocate. We do another event, an advocacy training in the spring, but year-round, it's important to advocate. And that our team, our government relations team at NFU, we're here to sort of be the eyes and the ears on the ground every day, and we engage the Hill every day, executive branch agencies every day. But ultimately, we are a grassroots membership organization, and our advocacy, our DC staff are only as powerful as our members and our state divisions are. And so bringing your voice to the table in your districts with your member for in-district events, calling and emailing congressional offices to make sure they understand Farmers Union policy and that they know us, that the Farmers Union brand is out there regularly is really important for our organization. And I think we do a really good job of that, and we'd love to see you be more a part of that. With that, let me turn it over to my colleague Charlie to talk a little bit more about other things we're doing to get our to do our advocacy work.
Sure. Thanks very much, Aaron. It's nice to see you all. And yes, I'm a proud Massachusetts and proud Bostonian, Boston born and bred. So I'm really excited to be here with you all. So, you know, as Aaron, Layla, and Mike were saying, we can't do this without our members. And another tool in the toolbox that we have to engage our membership and to really activate our members is our action alerts. And Mike, I'm going to share my screen now. Let me get this up. Okay.
Should be all clear. There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. So everyone can see the screen here. So this is actually an action alert that we put out earlier this week. For those of you, I'm sure many of you know action alerts, but for those who don't, an action alert is basically a way for us to activate our members on a wide scale to take action on an important policy priority. And again, this is another way for our members to make their voices heard. So for this week, we have the House Appropriations Committee is considering the fiscal year 2025 spending bill. There are some harmful provisions in there relating to the Packaging Stockyards Act that we oppose, and we want our members to take action. And so we sent out this action alert here, urging our members to contact their representatives and make their voices heard on this. So this is the alert that came out. You see our call to action here, and then the opportunity here to send your letter. I'm not going to actually click this because it'll take me to some weird page on my end, but you click this hyperlink and it'll take you to this page. Let me share again. Here we go. So it takes you to this page, which is our action alert on Action Network. And you see many of the same messaging here. Tell Congress to oppose the House funding bill that hurts family farmers and ranchers. You basically fill in your information here on the right side. I already have mine pre-filled. You start writing, and then it takes you to a prompt where you actually send your letter. And there's a letter in here that describes where we stand on this and why we oppose this and what we want our lawmakers to do. You fill in your information. It already pulls up who your representative is. So you'll see my representative. It's Rep. Jamie Raskin in Maryland. And then you type the letter in. You can edit the letter as you see fit if you'd like, or you can add additional text, or you can leave it exactly as is. And then you send the letter. And oh, I gotta fill out my information. But either way, you send your letter to your member of Congress, and off it goes. And there, and that simple step, really 2 clicks, you have made your voice heard as a member of Farmers Union. So my main point here before I'll turn it back is that the main objective of this, while we obviously care about the policy priority and securing, trying to influence our representatives, the main objective of the action alert is for you to make your voice heard and for us to help you flex your advocacy muscles. This is another tool in the toolbox for our members to be active in the federal policy process and to make their voices heard. And we're expanding this. We're excited about where this is going. And one thing that would be helpful is I dropped the action alert in the chat. So I will do that right now. And I think that's it. Mike, if there's anything I missed, feel free to. I'll turn it back to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Charlie. So you've got options as a Farmers Union member and ally to get involved, whether that's going to an event in Washington, D.C., meeting with your member of Congress or officials in their district, or being involved with some of the action alerts that we put out and issue as the need arises. So I expect we'll see more of these soon, whether it's on appropriations or if it's on the farm bill, but keep an eye out for those, and that's a good way to be involved. So kick it over now for some farm bill information and a little deep dive into what's going on in the 2024 farm bill process to Aaron.
Thanks, Mike. Well, I'm probably making a lot of assumptions about what folks in this group know or don't know about the Farm Bill. So forgive me if I'm sort of giving too much or too little, but I'm going to do my best, and I hope it generates some good conversation and Q&A later. I really want to start with just what is the Farm Bill. I assume you all are familiar somewhat, but the way we think about it is as an omnibus, just to get started with a really fancy word, multi-year law that governs a lot of, but not all, farm and food policy at the federal level in the United States. By omnibus, we're really referring to the fact that it's a very large bill containing a multitude of different pieces of legislation that have been introduced by members of Congress. We're also referring to the fact that, as you can see from that list of Farm Bill titles, there are a wide variety of issues, including those you might not think of as farm issues, like nutrition, which I understand a lot of you care about quite a bit, and we do too. It's not just a farm bill, it is a food bill, and that sort of makes it an omnibus thing too. Multi-year because it's written to last usually about 5 years. That's not a hard and fast rule in terms of it getting updated every 5 years. And the universe we're living in right now is a really good example of that, because we are operating under an extension of the 2018 Farm Bill, the last Farm Bill that passed. It expired in September of last year. The Farm Bill had to be extended because Congress hasn't been able to get one done just yet. For example, the 2014 Farm Bill was originally supposed to be the 2012 Farm Bill. So it's not always a perfect 5-year timeline, but we have been having about 5-year farm bills for quite a while now. And then just in terms of that wide array of policy, I want to touch on these titles and what the heck those are all about. Titles you can think of is just how the Farm Bill is organized. They are not things that are set in stone or sort of required by law. It's a choice Congress is making about sort of how to group the different topics and write the bill. But it shows the breadth of issues and topics covered by a farm bill. You can see them all up there, so I won't read them all, but everything from commodities to conservation to trade to nutrition and so on. So many, in fact, that there's a most miscellaneous title because there are issues that don't perfectly fit in those buckets that sort of cross-cut or aren't in any of them at all. But those are your Farm Bill titles to give you a bit of an idea about how the most recent Farm Bill was organized. Wouldn't be surprised if the next Farm Bill is fairly similar. One other thing, though, worth keeping in mind before I jump on from all that is that it's a wide variety of things, but it's not all farm and food policy. So I mentioned, for example, right, there's Title 4 is a nutrition title. I guess those numbers are a bit jumbled up there. But there are issues, for example, in child nutrition that aren't in the Farm Bill. You have WIC and school lunch and things like that that aren't authorized within. I don't share that to confuse you, more to say that it's not always so simple, but the vast majority of farm and food policy is within the Farm Bill. And that's part of why, for us as a grassroots farm organization, it's so important to us. Of course, farm and food policy outside the Farm Bill is important too, but we're deep in a Farm Bill debate, so it's important to focus on right now. I also want to provide a very brief history of the Farm Bill, not just a what about. To also say that we had farm policy before we had farm bills. We had things like the Homestead Act and the Morrill Act that created our land grant institutions, and the Hatch Act that created our ag research stations. So there was a time before farm bills. But in 1933, arguably, we got our first farm bill to really deal with farm commodity price issues, farmers facing really low prices, and an approach to deal with that. And arguably in 1973, we got our first true omnibus farm bill that pulled nutrition in, and we got that farm and food policy sort of married up in a single bill. And we've been living under that regime and way of operating for a while. I also just want to sort of talk about the lay of the land of who the players are in the Farm Bill. I think Mike had shown here the House Agriculture Committee. We have a committee in the House that focuses on agriculture, the House Agriculture Committee, and then in the Senate Agriculture Committee. And you can see that a wide variety of districts across the country, both sides of the aisle, are covered by Ag Committee members. I also just want to touch on who some of the biggest players are. In the Senate, the chairwoman is Debbie Stabenow of Michigan. Worth noting, there she is on second from the right-hand side. It's worth noting that the chairwoman is planning to retire at the end of this Congress. So there is an open question if the Democrats hold the Senate, who the next chair of the Ag Committee would be. Of course, the Senate might flip. A lot of folks think it will. And then Senator Bozeman there from Arkansas, current ranking member of the Senate Ag Committee, is likely to be leading the committee. On the left-hand side, you see ranking member David Scott of the House Agriculture Committee, and to his right, Glenn G.T. Thompson of Pennsylvania. I should have said David Scott is of Georgia, who currently chairs the House Agriculture Committee. These are really influential members of Congress in ag policy because they lead the ag committees. Of course, their staff, the committee staff who work for them, are really important players in writing farm bills too, and play an important role in liaising with all of the staff that that work for the different members, various members who are not the leaders of the ag committees or who lead the subcommittees of the Ag Committee and so on. But these are your key players. See if there's anything else I wanted to touch on here. A little bit more about why the Farm Bill matters. I think I've already said a few of those things, but to encapsulate it a bit more, those wide variety of titles in the Farm Bill really ultimately touch all Americans in one way, shape, or form. The nutrition title obviously has a major impact on the nutrition and food security of our nation and making sure that everybody can afford to eat. But the sort of food security components of the Farm Bill really extend beyond that. We need a strong farm safety net, as you see there in the upper left-hand corner, to ensure our food security domestically. Of course, the Farm Bill has a trade title and deals with international food security matters as well. So the impact is just so broad, and it's an incredibly important thing for Farmers Union. I also wanted to touch on a few of the specifics that I have a sense some of you care a lot about. For example, on the food security or nutrition security front, a huge component of the spending in the Farm Bill is on nutrition assistance, and the Farm Bill authorizes SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and formerly food stamps, which is an important part of that nutrition security support system in the United States. TFAP, the Emergency Food Assistance Program as well. GUSNIP, Double Up Bucks, that I assume many of you are familiar with, Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Assistance Program, and so on. Also, for the members of New England Farmers Union who tend to be direct market farmers or smaller scale, focused on local markets, there's been an increasing focus in recent years in the Farm Bill on those types of programs that can support those types of operations. The last Farm Bill, 2018 Farm Bill, established the Farmers Market Promotion Program and Local Food Promotion Program as permanent Farm Bill programs, permanent mandatory support, which was new, housed under the LAMP Local Agriculture Market Program. And that was a big deal to make sure that that can stick in the Farm Bill longer term. And also thinking about cooperatives and cooperative development, one of the important pieces authorized in the Farm Bill on that you may be familiar with in the Rural Development title is the Rural Cooperative Development Grant Program, which is really the only federal program exclusively investing in the startup, innovation, and growth of cooperative businesses, mostly funded through annual appropriations, but still authorized by the Farm Bill, and an incredibly important program. Co-op issues show up in other ways, sort of peppered throughout the Farm Bill, especially around questions of eligibility. If you're a co-op, are you eligible or not, across a wide variety of programs. But co-ops are also important in the Farm Bill. So with that, I've probably gone on long enough, but we want to talk a little bit about sort of the state of play in the Farm Bill right now. Where are we at in the Farm Bill negotiations? What's happened recently? And I'm going to turn it to my colleague, Layla, to touch on that.
Thanks, Aaron, and apologies there for not getting kicked out here. What happens next? Right now, we're looking at the Senate, and I'm sure, as was already mentioned earlier, the House Farm Bill passed back in the committee passed and marked up and passed the bill in May. Up until the early morning hours, I know that Mike, for example, was in the room present while this was happening. And quite an exciting journey. Speaking of journeys, the journey to a new farm bill is never straightforward, and there's always a unique pathway forward. And with the reauthorization having already included a year-long extension of the 2018 bill, latest action here is as we look to the Senate. And when the House was marking up the bill and debating the Farm Bill, it included very familiar debates that have been included in previous conversations between funding the farm safety net and nutrition assistance, alongside new debates about protecting generational conservation, climate investments. And I will turn to Aaron in a minute, but also this is the first time Farm Bill has included COVID-19 pandemic-related relief, or even discussed that, quite unique. So like I mentioned, the vote happened back in May. It kicked off shortly after 11 a.m. And I believe, Mike, it went off until 12:30, 1 in the morning. It was about 13 hours, and with a lot of amendments. And from here, action is likely to go back to the Senate, where the Farm Bill will need 60 votes in order to pass. And by definition, a 2024 Senate Farm Bill must be bipartisan. The House Farm Bill markup had 4 Democrats that voted in favor of the bill. And the Senate should also include that similar type of bipartisan support. So I will turn to Aaron to talk a little bit about nutrition, if you're able to.
Yeah, happy to. Well, one of the major sticking points in the current Farm Bill debate, and this isn't the first time it has been a major issue in Farm Bills, is around nutrition assistance. Part of that is right now because one of the big questions at the Farm Bill is, how do we pay for it? How do we fund it? So some of the issues we've really run into are finding those so-called pay-fors for all of the different things we want to do and accomplish, and all the different stakeholders that it takes to pass a Farm Bill that really can pass the House and Senate. It takes satisfying a wide variety of constituents. So one of the areas that had come into play to help fund the Farm Bill was around this question of the so-called thrifty food program, having to do with how we calculate the benefit levels for SNAP, for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And it's become a bit of a hot button. And for example, Senator Stabenow, Chairwoman Stabenow, who I mentioned, has really drawn a line in the sand, saying we won't take any money from SNAP, that by revising the way we do TFP in the next Farm Bill, that would not allow benefit levels to increase as regularly and so forth, and has really drawn a line in the sand there. Whereas in the House, Chairman Thompson has felt like there should be a change there. Also, Senator Bozeman in the Senate believes that the current system to allow for those TFP changes shouldn't be allowed. And by creating those restrictions, it does create some funding for other things. So there's been a hang up around that. There also has been disagreement to a degree around the climate and conservation money that came through the Inflation Reduction Act, which brought new additional resources to bear for on-farm conservation, but that is not currently inside the Farm Bill. It exists outside the Farm Bill. So most members are in agreement at this point that those dollars should be brought into the Farm Bill, which increases the overall level of funding for conservation primarily in the Farm Bill, but there's still some disagreements about how much of those funds should stay with conservation or potentially be moved to pay for other things. And there are also disagreements about whether the way that money currently sort of has some so-called sideboards on them required to be spent for certain things around climate change, whether that should be broadened to a wider set of practices. So there are some disagreements yet there too. With that, I might turn it back over to my colleagues to touch on any other sort of flashpoints and issues that have come up in this Farm Bill debate.
Well, one more really technical part of the Farm Bill that's been at the crux of the debate on spending has been around the Commodity Credit Corporation. You'll hear this talked about as the CCC. USDA has some special authority to be able to use roughly a revolving fund of about $30 billion annually to respond to challenges in agriculture, usually surrounding the marketing of crops or livestock, to help with agricultural marketing. That can mean a lot of things, and it has been used to mean a lot of things over the years as well, whether it's disaster relief due to natural disasters, whether it's support when prices collapse or markets fail. You name it, it's been used for a lot of things. USDA has, in some ways, a blank check when it comes to using the CCC. This got a lot of attention during the Trump administration during the trade dispute with China. And when soybean tariffs were put in place and prices tanked rather quickly in the soybean market, amongst other agricultural commodities, the Trump administration took very rapid action to use a program to send direct support to farmers who qualified under these programs. That was through the CCC. Recently, the CCC has been used for some more climate-based and climate-focused initiatives. And with that in mind, between the rather big spending that went out during the Trump administration, the climate-focused efforts through the CCC and the Biden administration, the House Republicans in the Ag Committee, their bill includes language that would restrict USDA's authority over CCC. House Republicans claim this will save about $50 billion over the life of the Farm Bill. $50 billion over the life of the Farm Bill. That number is very much in question because the official scorekeepers, the Congressional Budget Office, say it would only save about $8 billion. So that $42 billion difference constitutes many of the costs of changes that have been proposed in that House Ag Committee bill. The Senate isn't going to take that sort of action. Ranking Member Bozeman on the Senate side has said he won't make that same sort of cut if he were in charge. Senator Stabenow also wouldn't do that sort of change. So many of the proposals that are getting a lot of attention and favorable coverage out of the House Ag Committee have a big question mark around them because of where that alleged savings would come from. So that's one of the other big issues. There were, as Layla mentioned, many amendments offered during the House markup, and lots of flashpoints resulted from that. Looking to the Senate Agriculture Committee might be poised to have a markup either later this month, although the clock is ticking loudly and quickly on that, or potentially in September, where a more bipartisan bill is likely to come forward in the Senate Agriculture Committee. It's not a done deal, but it's more likely to be more bipartisan than what the House did. If that happens and a farm bill moves through the Senate Agriculture Committee, there's a chance, and again, not a sure thing by any means, but that a farm bill could get done this year with some sort of behind closed doors conference committee negotiation process between the House version and a future Senate version. If those four sides really were able to come together and negotiate something, there's a chance a farm bill could be passed into law in the lame duck session after the election. Whether or not that's a good thing remains to be seen, because we don't just want a farm bill for the sake of getting a farm bill done. We want the right farm bill done. And you saw some of the and heard some of the points that Farmers Union's been raising along the way. For instance, on the House bill, there was some errant news coverage about that said many different organizations supported the farm bill that the House Republicans put forward. Farmers Union was listed in that. We did not support the House Farm Bill. We said some encouraging things about the process moving forward, but no, we did not support the House Farm Bill. Other organizations, many of them actually, had similar sentiments that it's good to see progress, but we didn't necessarily sign off on that being the official best possible outcome. What we'll see, though, in the next couple of months, hopefully, is some negotiations to improve the Farm Bill, get it to a point where there's a better safety net for farmers, that there's more investment in a resilient food system, that we're not starting the Farm Bill process by cutting nutrition benefits, that we're building a stronger set of communities, rural communities, through investments there. So we look to see some improvements. We hope that we can, emphasize Farmers Union priorities throughout, and also bearing in mind that things won't necessarily get any easier if we have to do a farm bill again next year. And there's some budgetary concerns surrounding that, let alone political concerns that could arise with all the uncertainty for the next few months. Let's see. Aaron, Layla, Charlie, did we miss anything?
Yeah, I did fail to mention an amendment that took up a lot of time during the markup that went way into the night on child labor. The amendment was proposed by Congressman Kazar and goes with a lot of the policies, legislation that he himself has been advocating for, specifically child labor and meat packing, and trying to get more oversight on that. But needless to say, the amendment did not pass. There were a lot of additional issues that were added to the discussion, and I think on both sides of the aisle, no one really predicted that the discussion would take that long. But always fun to watch, and definitely be in the room for. And I'm sure that folks were very excited and heated during the debate, as it was they were really tired. So, always happy to answer questions on that. And if he doesn't really have any, we do not have policy on that child labor, but definitely good relationships with everyone there. So
we are not in favor of child labor. I can
yes, we are not.
Assert that for sure. Thanks, Layla. Yes. So if there's any questions about what's going on with the Farm Bill right now, what the next steps might be, policy concerns, happy to answer them. This is what we get excited about every day to go to work. So let us know. We want to help out.
All right. Well, hey, thanks, folks. Appreciate the deep dive into even though it's probably a shallow dip for you guys, but I think for a lot of us, that was a considerable deep dive at lunchtime. Folks, let's just come, turn your camera on, and if you got a question, let's, you've got some experts here on a lot of farm and food policy. Now's a great time to ask some questions. And while we're waiting, I guess I'll start it off. So right now, parts of Vermont and New Hampshire are really getting hit hard with some extreme weather. Actually, 1 year to the date, I think to the day, when we had some serious flooding last year that impacted a lot of farms. What particular, maybe just real quick, just what particular, besides disaster assistance, what can we do to sort of mitigate, and what will the Farm Bill do to help small farms and communities mitigate some of these extreme weather events? And if you can keep that brief so other folks can get a question, and that'd be appreciated.
Sure. No, thanks for that, Roger. And I'll go over to Aaron for some of the like climate side pieces on this too, as we look at this with the bigger, broader picture. Yeah, I'm there's you said besides disaster, I'm going to talk about disaster anyway, because there's likely to be some sort of disaster legislation or initiative at USDA coming out as a result of extreme weather in different parts of the country. It could range from central Virginia in this area where we're in some moderate to high end drought right now, actually. That might be but a small part of a bigger picture across the country of the flooding we've seen in Vermont, New Hampshire, and as well as in the Midwest. So there could be some disaster assistance afoot later on this year, something that might come up election year times, but keep an eye on that, and it might be something we need to act on in the months ahead. And there are some emergency watershed restoration programs within USDA. Those are standing disaster programs that help, if you've seen some real damage to waterways, man-made or otherwise, there's some USDA assistance programs there. And then, package that in with all the other aspects of the climate initiatives too that USDA has that Aaron can so rightly and informedly speak about.
Yeah, I'll keep it short though, but to say that, it's thinking longer term in a really important way. The Farm Bill tries to build resilience for farmers to climate change. It's through its conservation programs, these Title II conservation programs. These programs fund the Natural Resources Conservation Service at USDA, NRCS, to provide cost share to farmers who apply to do certain practices that conserve soil, water, keep our air clean, and so on, through a suite of programs, some more single practice specific, some more whole farm specific. And when I alluded to that, those questions around climate change earlier, it was an infusion of cash outside of the Farm Bill for those programs with a very specific focus also around climate mitigation practices that sequester carbon and so on. And while that might not necessarily address exactly the issues Roger's talking about, is an important piece of the puzzle too. So thinking longer term, both around the mitigation and adaptation side of climate change, there are billions of dollars being spent, and the additional infusion is important for continuing to build that long-term support in the countryside and opportunities to build on farm resilience.
Thanks, gentlemen. And I just, I asked that question so folks would understand that these suite of programs that USDA offers aren't just for farmers, they're for communities. So if you're, with your co-op, I know co-ops are always highly engaged in their communities. There are resources available, and we have staff, and you have myself in urban that can help locally, and you also have our staff in DC that can also rattle a cage if necessary to help identify the programs or help push the program, give it a nudge if necessary. So just keep that in mind if you're impacted by these events, and we seem to be having more. Anybody else has a question, just jump on. Go off mute. All right, well, I guess I'll throw one more question out there. We have a lot of co-op members here, and I think, Aaron, you mentioned that the rural development title is where most of our co-op programs exist. And I think it's probably just explaining what those programs, some of the rural business development grant, where their funding's at and how they can assist in co-op development. Just briefly want to touch on it. I'm not sure if that's your portfolio or not, Aaron, so forgive me if it isn't.
Well, I'm happy to start, and then my colleagues can jump in if they want around some of these things. I think on RCDG, so it's not my portfolio per se. I handle some of our annual appropriations work, and it's thanks to that annual funding process that we have some of that co-op development money, that RCDG funding. And so I think one thing you really could do, if that is important to you, is the funding has not been, I don't believe ever, but please don't, I'm now quoted, right, because I'm being recorded, but it's been quite a while since that funding has been at its fully authorized level. It is not that robustly funded. And I know other groups we work with, like NCBA CLUSA, are really focused on that, and we have been joining them for some time and calling for more funding for RCDG. And I think that's an area where maybe you already are active, but building that case, helping Congress understand why that co-op development program is so important and that it is pretty sparsely funded. I think that's a good area to put in some energy and attention. And I know NCBA CLUSA has been working on that, and we've been playing a supporting role for some time, but just something to keep in mind. Anyone else have anything else they want to jump in on co-op wise? It's kind of the big one, but Irvin, I mean, I feel like I shouldn't be speaking to this. You know this so well.
Oh no, that's great, and we are certainly working with NCBA on it. You're right; it's very much underfunded and could do a lot more. And I was just going to mention that it really does take all of us. I mean, I know this isn't necessarily a focus or priority for Farmers Union, but when NCBA or NFCA tries to make the case on this funding, it certainly strengthens our hand to be able to say that the Farmers Union supports us in this, and your members help us make that case in a way that we just couldn't do it on our own. So I do think the synergy among the organizations is really important. I did want to I was looking at the chat, and Robert Chang had a question. What are you hearing about changes in Farm Bill to NAP and other insurance programs?
Yeah, thanks for that question. NAP being the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program, or the much shorter NAP. The general theme of changes that were included is in the House Farm Bill and have been outlined in frameworks from Senator Stabenow is to make NAP a on-ramp to crop insurance, to make it as easy as possible and as helpful as possible to enroll in NAP, and trying to expand that as much as possible for farmers who have either highly diversified operations that aren't otherwise eligible for crop insurance, in order to be on there, reducing paperwork and making sure that NAP works for as best as it can for as many different crops and production methods as possible where crop insurance is not otherwise available. I think it's not a wholesale change to the NAP program. It's not like building a new program or anything like that, but some general increases in coverage level, in premium, as opposed to, or reducing the premium or fees to be part of the program. That's the general push on NAP right now. But there's more emphasis on it in what Senator Stabenow has put forward in a framework than we see in the House Republican version, or the House version. But that's where we stand at this point.
Mike, just want to add too that I mean, Robert's farms in Connecticut, and that the Representative Hayes put forward the improved safety net for small farmers bill. So what's the status of that in the current mix of things?
Yeah, well, I think the that bill from Representative Hayes, elements of that are counted as part of what's in the House bill. Chairman Thompson perhaps has a broad read of that, but the general ideas, much of that have been incorporated in some way, shape, or form in the House bill. So I see that as a positive step there. Doesn't include everything that Congresswoman Hayes put forward, but it has seen some play.
Yeah, thanks. Great question, Robert. And now there's one from Sam. in Flatbush Food Co-op about urban agriculture initiatives, which I think there was just a meeting of the FACA, which is the Federal Advisory Committee. I believe didn't they just have a meeting? Not that that's Farm Bill related directly, but I think that's authorized in the Farm Bill. Go ahead, guys.
Layla, do you want to jump in on urban ag, or do you want me to take a hit there? Just the sort of status of urban ag negotiations in the Farm Bill.
You definitely, and I can just mention there real quick, that, urban agriculture, especially at USDA, is something that is, especially during the administration, quite new in that there isn't any history or data to look at and to refer to and what has worked and what has not worked. So this is something that, we are very much open to hearing suggestions and learning more about what is affecting urban agriculture. Aaron, you can touch on what you know. I know what Aaron has worked on the issue for a few years now. So
No, happy to share a little bit more, and we can also follow up as well, and happy to be in touch, Sam. The last Farm Bill was really foundational in institutionalizing urban ag within the Farm Bill, and Senator Stabenow of Michigan, Chairwoman Stabenow, was instrumental there. And with her retirement, I think anyone concerned with and interested in urban ag should really think hard about who those and that next major champion for urban ag will be. So just something to keep in mind. But the last Farm Bill, the 18 Farm Bill, established an urban ag office at USDA. And that was really a big deal, and some funding for urban ag programs. So I know Senator Stabenow's Farm Bill framework included more on the Office of Urban Ag and Innovative Production, and some extension of funding. Of course, that bill isn't passed yet, so that might be something you want to dig into and advocate on, and happy to follow up with some information about sort of what ended up in the House bill and what ended up in the Senate frameworks after this meeting. So we'll be in touch.
All right. Any other questions here? We're coming up on an hour and want to. Oh, Frank, go ahead, Frank. Frank Hunter.
Yes. So first want to apologize for being late. Today's a harvest day, so I'm out picking cucumbers and zucchini in the greenhouse. So my brain's a little toasted, but I guess my feelings about the whole. I mean, I've been a vegetable farmer for 22 years now, and I'll say, like, the Farm Bill, I don't know, we spent 10 years getting no NRCS funding at all, and then maybe the last 10 years we've gotten lots of NRCS funding. Mm-hmm. And our income level is no better. So honestly, I don't see the Farm Bill addressing farmers' incomes at all. Like, to me, I'm so psyched to have high vegetable prices. It's great because my expenses haven't gone up that much. So to me, much of the Farm Bill is completely worthless. Like, there's no, I mean, I get maybe a tenth of my money income from people paying me, for EBT. But aside from that, honestly, the Farm Bill, I just don't see a lot of great things in there. I'm not a big bipartisan fan. I mean, I think if we go with MAGA as our partner in writing a Farm Bill, it's a huge mistake. I would rather see a very partisan, okay, this is what we stand for, and let the Republicans have their, horrible bill, and then let the chips fall. Because right now, when we have a bipartisan, we have the worst of both worlds. I'm a little cynical, but again, I mean, just to put it another way, like I'm a town chairperson for the Democrats, and I'm on the county. I'm a delegate in the county, so I'm heavily involved in politics, but it's very partisan.
Was there a question there, Frank?
I don't
Just
know
kidding.
where I don't know where the question was. I apologize. I don't see where like small farmers make it in the farm bill. I don't see anything in the farm bill. I mean, there's a tiny little like, but I mean, I'm not a big fan of small change. I want big change.
Well, Frank, I part of me can't disagree with anything you said, but on the other part, what you opened with,
Yeah.
20 years ago, you had nothing from NRCS. Now you do,
Yep.
even though it's still, relatively small, but it's something, and that's because of the advocacy that we and other groups have done over the years.
Yeah.
The fact that, we still don't have Robert asked the question about NAP and whole farm, and that's something that Mike put me on a committee, I don't know, 12 years ago or something like that, when a long time ago, and I've been working on those issues with USDA and other groups, and we make incremental change. This is a big multi-billion-dollar ship, and we are borderline de minimis in the math, but we're gaining traction. And I think a lot of the IRA funding, even during the COVID relief, there was a lot of targeted resources. It doesn't happen overnight. The ship of state is a big ship, and it takes a while to turn it. And even though I think we got an iceberg coming at us, we just hopefully we can get around that and keep going forward. But I understand your frustration, for sure. I'm sure we all do.
I've used the crop insurance, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the worst. It's so inefficient, and the payback is so horrible that I could lose everything and still do better on my own.
I get you.
Get rid of it. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, it's not in the farm bill, so we can't. It's one of those separate, right? One of those separate bills. And we just do little amendments within the farm bill for some of these other programs. But anyway, I just want to make sure, since we're at time, we're a little past time, and these folks got, well, it's also Friday, so want to make sure we respect everyone's time. So if there's no other questions, I just want to encourage, folks, we have a legislative fly-in coming up. If anyone's interested in attending that fly-in, please reach out to me or Urban as soon as possible. We can't bring a lot of folks; we're budget limited, but we certainly would like good representation from every state. Like I said, we may be small, but we have a significant number. We have 12 U.S. senators and 19 members of Congress. That's a block of votes, folks. And if you don't think it matters, it does matter. And it's not going to do the drastic change that we'd all like to see, but we can certainly tweak something here or nudge something there, and that's what's important. So I really want to thank you all for coming out. Look forward to following up. We'll be hosting another one probably in the fall, but the next big event is our national fly-in. And, folks from this call, you're invited to reach out to Urban and I. And it's the dates, Charlie. Thank you, Charlie.
September 9 through 11.
9 through 11. So you come in on the Sunday. Is that the 8th? Yeah. So fly in on the 8th, and you'd fly home the afternoon of the 11th. And if you can't make the whole thing, that's fine too. But you really don't want to miss the USDA day on Monday, which is a big briefing from all the high mucky mucks. And then we go over to the Hill for more high mucky muck meetings with chairmen, chairwomen, and ranking members, and some really smart people. And you get to ask questions of really people that are really influential in these things. But no one's more influential in these things than you are. So, but you gotta take what you learned here and what you've learned through life, and then go tell your story in DC. Urban, back to you. Anything else?
Oh, I was just going to echo what you said. We know people have a lot going on today. We took Frank out of his greenhouse today. Really appreciate your being here. And we know everybody's super busy, and just want to give one more thanks to NFU staff. Really appreciate all of your insights and information. It's a huge value added for all of us. And again, we need you to help build membership, think about who should be part of these conversations, and we'll be circling back with you with more opportunities. So thank you.